Hello, everybody, and welcome to Documentation Not Included. It is Thursday, 7 p.m. normal time. And we're live on twitch.tv/DNI stream. It is time for episode version 11.8, Contract Lens, spelled the American way, as we were having our discussion earlier.
Only just noticed as well. I've been using it all week. Oh.
I'm Josey Howarth, and as always, I am joined by the Fender Reach Out to Asia Stratocaster to my Squire Affinity Stratocaster, Chris Seebach.
Now, I do understand that reference because I am also a musician and have plenty of musical equipment, but Squire versus Fender, I suppose. I'll let you off there. I'm not a Strat fan.
No, not just any. It's the Fender Reach Out to Asia Stratocaster, which has sold, it's one of the top #1 selling guitars to the Squire Affinity Stratocaster, which you can get like at the supermarket for like 50 quid. Wow. So there is a vast difference. You are the Fender Stratocaster to my Squire.
I'll take that once again. So yes, as always, hello Josey and hello to everybody in chat. There's already something going on, and we've got a few new names as well going on today. Please do get involved with the show. It is a live show. We do field questions at any point. We might not be able to answer them. We may not read them out.
At any point. We try to squeeze them in at the appropriate moments.
We fit them in when they are necessary. So yes, please do get involved if you see the need at any point during the show.
Oh, yes. And before we get started, as always, we have our little icebreaker question. This is a question we just asked to ourselves and guests and to you who are listening. So do let us know your own responses to this. But I want to know today, Chris, what is the weirdest thing you have ever eaten? And I hear your cat in the background.
I was just going to say my cat. He always comes in at the... One of my cats. He's neurotic, that one. He's scratching at the door now. Apologies for those who can hear that. The weirdest thing I've ever eaten. Oh. I have sampled and did not like chicken's feet. Not a fan. I've eaten alligator. I've eaten kangaroo. I've eaten plenty of different types of meats like ostrich, but they're not that weird, I suppose. Not these days. I'll have to, I don't know, you give me yours, I'll have to have a think.
Well, let me preface this by saying that I didn't know this at the time, and it came back and haunted me horribly. But I, for full disclosure, am allergic to fish, right? However, some way, shape, or form, somebody I knew actually gave me something, and it turned out to be fish eyeballs.
Ooh.
And there is a crunch to them that is kind of horrific.
As a pop.
And not just a pop, but there is a crunch to them.
The lens.
Just thinking about it is giving me such horrible heebie-jeebies.
Yes, I found, Vina's just said kangaroo is really good. I found it quite bouncy as a meat. Sorry, my wife likes a pun. She'd be proud of me for that one.
Oh, that is horrible, Chris. Absolutely horrible.
So anyway, on to today's subject. Let's get serious. I honestly can't think of anything more at the moment. Maybe I'll think by the end of the episode.
And if you hear any whinging on my side of the cape, this pond type thing, my dog is now whining because my husband should be home some point soon, so she's freaking out waiting for him.
Yes. So on to today's subject, we have entitled it Contract Lens.
Because we're turning our eye onto contracts.
We are indeed. So
fun in there.
Those of you who know us and listen to the show know that both Josey and I are freelancers / contractors. Josey's
sort of.
Yeah, Josey's more of a freelancer service provider type thing, and I do a lot of consulting and contracting as well. So we're going to be discussing why contracts are important, what kind of contracts there are, what they should contain, and also what you should look out for when signing contracts that are raised on your behalf. In my instance, as a contractor, I quite often get agencies give me a contract, and I have to sign that in order to work for a particular client. So there's going to be a lot.
I have my clients sign contracts with me.
Yes, and I do that directly as well. So I have my own contract that I sign with clients. So, at the end of the day. Yeah. Now, I am going to read out a statement that I have prepared. It's in bright red letters. We are not lawyers in any way, shape, or form. We have opinions, and that's about it. Nothing we share should be construed as legal advice, and we take no responsibility for any actions you take regarding the examples, opinions, and advice we provide here. Always consult a solicitor regarding your contracts and know that you and/or your company are fully responsible for any contract terms that you agree to. Our podcast is provided as is and is based on how we choose to run our own companies. Do not listen to us.
Oh, that is amazing. Now that we got the IANL out.
Yeah, but no, basically, we have lots and lots of experience in this. I am a particularly adamant contractor. I am vehemently opposed to terms that I disagree with, and I will not. I've even done it this week. I've actually said no to a fairly lucrative contract that I did not agree with the terms, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail later on. Obviously, we won't name clients or anything like that, but we will go into a bit more detail.
Yeah, that's one of the beautiful things. I can't name clients. I have signed an NDA.
Well, same me. I'm not even allowed to use them on my website. You know, I'm in the process of potentially writing case studies. Well, I've got some on there already. Some clients have signed off and said yes, but most of my clients, and there's hundreds of them over the years, there's no way I can use the logo. There's no way I can talk about the projects and tie it to a client. I have to be generic.
Very general. Yeah.
So it's what it is. So yes, let's start off with why are contracts important?
Well, you need to have some kind of agreement to understand what. Actually, you know what this reminds me of? There is a fantastic YouTube series, and of course I can't remember what it is right now, so I feel absolutely horrible. But you know, money, the cash that we all carry around and stuff, is actually a contract. It's an exchange of something to get something back in return.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but it's a quid pro quo.
Oh, I thought I was going to be the worst pun today.
But no, that's not even a pun. That is an actual statement of fact. It is you exchange something to get something in return. End of story.
I don't have any notes on me now, but I believe that UK notes all have "I promise to pay the bearer." That is your contract. That's what it's written on every UK note.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing in the United States as well. Or at least they used to. Gosh, I haven't touched a United States dollar in so long, I couldn't even begin to tell you. But that's basically what it comes down to. It is an agreement between, generally speaking here, two parties that something will be exchanged in return for something else.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just been kissed on the top of my head by my husband who has walked in. For those of you who are listening on the podcast in the future, you've missed a very handsome man with a beard. But anyway.
Excuse me?
Well, you're Chris. You're just Chris. But what it comes down to is having a contract actually allows there to be a very clear definition of what the two exchanges are between the parties.
Now, a contract can be anything. We're talking about written contracts here specifically.
Yes, not gentlemen's handshakes. And in fact, if you're running a company and you're doing gentlemen's handshakes, don't be me from the past. Be better.
Just go and watch some Judge Rinder if you're doing that. And there are other shows like that. Judge Judy, I think, was the original, wasn't it, in America? But no, essentially,
it was someone else, some guy. But anyway.
So yeah, we're talking specifically about business contracts that we write down and we agree to with another party. Generally business to business contracts, but these can also be business to customer contracts if that is how you view it. They're the same thing to an extent. There are usually more stringent terms in a business to business contract in terms of I don't know, for example, there may be a specification for me to have to work on site somewhere, or there might have to be, you have to use this. In my instance, I'm a software developer, so that I might have to use somebody's hardware in order to fulfill the services because there are stringent security requirements for me to do that. Generally, I don't personally take work that requires that most of the time, but sometimes I will, depending on the circumstances. Contracts can be anything from a few lines that you've written down and signed to...
I'm thinking beer napkins.
To 50, 100-page documents, you know?
Oh, even more in some
Yes,
cases.
so Josey and I discussed briefly before, we've got standard terms that we use with our direct clients. My standard terms are about 7 pages long. Josey's are about, was it 11, did you say?
11 to 14.
Now, I'm not going to show you because it's a contract and it's not a thing. I have something pinned up on my wall that one of our listeners, not somebody who's in chat at the moment, one of our listeners may very well recognise when I speak about it. I sold something to somebody a few weeks ago, and it was £100, this item, and it was a friend. And although it's a friend, now this is how much of a businessman I am, or a business orientated mind I am, even though he's a friend and I trusted that he would pay me, I got him to write it down. And it says, date, recipient's name and address. It's an IOU, and it says, I, blah de blah, promise to pay Chris for this item, this amount. I have paid £30 and I will pay £70 by this date. They're the fundamental things that you need in a contract.
Well, you need to know what is being exchanged, period. In our case, it is a service of some kind in exchange for financial benefit to be able to buy groceries and actually exist in this world that is economically unfriendly to people who do not collect money for the services they render. But yes, so why are they important? To me, it is because there needs to be a clear definition of what is actually being exchanged. In my case, for example, I'm exchanging time, expertise, actual code in cases, space on servers, things like that. I have to break down what it is that I am offering, and I have to then let them know that for each of these particular things, there is a charge, a fee that is agreed upon by both of us.
And that really defines a scope, doesn't it? That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the scope of services that we provide. Now, one of the problems we have in the contracting world is that our scope is often quite wide. If we sign up for a job that is sold to us by a recruitment agent who typically sell permanent jobs to people, we see a job spec and we see technical architect, .NET developer, JavaScript front-end developer, and they have a list of kind of job requirements, but they don't talk about the project you're going to be working on. They don't talk about the start and end points of the project, kind of the scope, the scale. That's something that has to happen, and it doesn't happen. The job spec, to me, that is not enough. To me, that is not that is too wide a scope, because they can essentially say, right, you're providing services as a technical architect, but we can move you from project to project, and we can move you on whatever we want, whenever we want. That to me says I'm an employee.
Yeah, to me, that rings employee. I mean, granted, in my particular case, the stuff that I do is slightly different than you, Chris. Obviously, we've discussed this. 9 times out of 10, the clients that I work with could not do what I do for them in-house. It's just an impossibility, either due to expertise or just, that is the way it works. For example, I work with some authors, and authors 9 times out of 10 just want to write their books. They really, 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 really don't want to pay any attention to something like their author presence or their, websites or whatever. So in my particular case, I don't get well, now that you have finished doing this, I am going to shuffle you to this, or but like that is not a thing that happens in my particular situation. What does happen is, because I seem to be the only IT person they know, I get the typical IT questions, should I be using this software? I cannot give you advice on that because that is not part of our contract, and I don't want responsibility
And
for what
yeah,
happens.
quite often it's not, may not be your area of expertise. You might have some knowledge of it, but we agree this scope and these statements really to make sure that we are providing services that are relevant to our skill set.
Yeah, just because I know about, the computer and binary doesn't mean that I am going to be able to tell you the best printer cartridges to use. I have a printer, and that is the extent of it.
I don't get them kind of questions from my clients because, as you quite rightly pointed out, the distinction often is that I'm working with my clients' employees on projects that, I mean, this doesn't always happen. I do a lot of consulting as well, but if I'm working on a long-term project, I work with them and I provide kind of part of the service, part of the code base, part of this, I don't know, the configuration. It could be anything. But or more often than not, that is specified as a job rather than specified as a list of deliverables.
Correct. And I think that is why it is so important for the contract to be explicitly clear about what it is that you're doing, which is why in our case, at least for us, Chris, when we present ourselves to a potential client or a potential customer, we're not sitting there trying to fill a seat in a team or something else like that. What we're doing is we are companies offering services, and we just happen to be an employee of our own company, and we're the ones providing the service. However, I am pretty certain that in your contract, like within mine, it is explicitly stated that some of the work may be contracted out to another contractor.
It is in my direct contracts.
Right, but
quite
not in the
often,
ones from the agents?
If I go through an agency, there are certain restrictions quite often that I cannot get around, and I keep trying to.
Right.
I mean, I've working with one particular client through an agency, and I've got quite a good relationship with the agency and the client. And I am absolutely a consultant. There is no shadow of a doubt. There's very few people that are technical on site. I provide services to them. I help them with the software and the configuration and setting things up and putting processes in place and all kinds of things. But when I work with them, we agree deliverables on a month-by-month basis. But one of the things that I keep trying to get is, can I subcontract some of this work to somebody I know? And the agency, it kind of takes away some of their profit potentially, maybe, but it really does depend on how I approach it. However, that agency, it stipulates I cannot subcontract in the contract. However, I have also talked to them, and if I can come up with a good reason for subcontracting, they will allow it. They will change the contract. But most agencies, typically, will not allow that.
Well, see, that's interesting because in some cases, like in my particular case, I have a whole bunch of, I hate this, but cloud platforms in order to do hosting and things like that. Or I'm brought in to take care of hosting in someone other places. Please stay away from GoDaddy. That is my only warning to people. But 9 times out of 10, the clients that I work with do not care what it is I'm doing or how I'm going about doing what I'm doing, as long as I am delivering the end result deliverable. So they don't care whether I have them on AWS or DigitalOcean or some other hosting platform, as long as, the prices that I've agreed with them on are being hit, the deliverables for the different targets that we have set are being hit. But that's sort of the service provider side of things, more so than anything else. 9 times out of 10, though, the other side of the clients that I work with, where I do some kind of virtual assistance with them, I cannot contract that out. So I actually don't have that clause in.
Okay, well, I have my terms are generally, unless a client says to me, we will not allow you to subcontract, and then we'll have a discussion and we'll negotiate. Like I'm talking about a direct client.
Right.
I've currently got a contract out there that's waiting to be signed. I'm starting some work next week with that client, and I'm waiting for them to sign it off. It was actually due yesterday, which I need to chase it tomorrow. I just realised that they said they would have it all done yesterday, but they haven't. Anyway, so what was the point we were trying to get at? Subcontracting. If the client comes back to me and says, we want you to do this work, we do not want you to subcontract, then that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. That doesn't take necessarily any much control away from me, because I expect to provide all of the services myself.
Yeah.
However, I do have another clause which is different from subcontracting, which is called a substitution clause. I am allowed to say, let's say, for example, I'm charging £100 a day to a client, yes? And that £100 a day is for one consultant. It's clearly stated in the contract, one consultant will be provided. My contract is very clear in that if that consultant cannot provide the service, I can send another consultant as long as they have the skills to carry that work out. That's the flexibility that I have. However, I've never needed to use that. And I find it very difficult for me to come to any situation where I would be able to do that, because the clients want me. They want my personal service and my skills that I have sold them.
You know, I think that's one of the things that, you know, considering this is part of our sort of contractor, freelancer, run your own company part of the documentation podcast that we've got going here, I think it's worth mentioning that when you are a one-man show, like, it can be very terrifying for a client to take you on, particularly with long-term services, because if anything happens to you, health, act of nature, whatever, they don't have you anymore.
And
You know?
that's the kind of thing that you need to cover in your contract. My contract is very explicit in that because I am a one-person service, they know that I am. I don't make it. I don't hide the fact. It's on my website. You know, I have
You're
two
a
employees.
two-person circuit.
I have two. I have an employee.
You have administration, yeah.
But they do not contribute to the main services that earn money for my business. They are an administrative function. So it's me. If I die, I fall off a cliff, etc. My contract is explicit in that I can cancel and terminate the contract with 7 days' notice without any reason.
You do 7 days. Oh, you lucky thing.
But the thing is, a lot of the contracts in my industry are 28 days, 30 days, 60 days. However,
it depends for me, and it depends on what it is that I've got the agreement with or what service it is that I'm providing. Because if I turned around and said, I'm going to give you 7 days notice that I am shutting down your hosting solution, that is insane to me and absolutely unfair.
On who?
If I had that in my contract, because
so what would be fair? I don't understand which way you would prefer it.
Longer.
Okay.
I give, because of the fact that it's on a monthly billing cycle, I tend to do it on a monthly sort of thing. But so to me, 7 days just seems way too short.
That's fine. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I provide a service that is disposable to my clients.
Yeah.
And if I am unavailable, they will be able to get somebody else. Might take them a month, 2 months, might take them longer to get somebody else, but they can usually replace me. However, all of my industry works on 3, 6 month, 9 month, 12-month terms.
Right.
Normally, a contract is 3 months, and a lot of clients wait until the last moment, or a lot of agencies wait till the last moment to actually give you the contract. So it's kind of a rolling it's a rolling contract of services, but you can with an agency, sometimes you can drop out, sometimes you can't, sometimes they don't give you a termination clause. I don't like that, because I cannot guarantee for the next 3 months that I will be available. Something might happen to my wife and I might need to be with her. You know, I have to have that termination clause in there.
Yeah, see, I will not sign a contract that does not have termination for both parties in it. End of story.
It has to be mutual as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, it has to be very, very clear what those terms are, or what it just basically needs to be very clear.
There's also a determination for a clause, rather, in my contract that says that the client, if they are unsatisfied with my work to a reasonable extent, or
I don't like your beard, Chris. It's not long enough.
Or a breach of contract in any way, shape, or form, or either company goes into administration, then they can cancel the contract immediately, without any notice whatsoever. But what's really important to me is that mutual termination notice, that ability for us to have mutual business respect for each other. It's in my interests as a business to keep going, to keep up an engagement with a client. But if I equally do not like a client, or do not like working for them, or disagree with something while I'm working with them, I need the ability to say, you're fired, without legal ramifications back upon me. So
I,
this
I
is
completely agree.
these kind of things are the things you have to consider in a contract, and there's lots of
Yes, and
things.
and I think it's worth us jumping into the fact that, when it comes down to contracts, they can come from a variety of places. But who, Chris, who should be the one to provide the contract?
So, in the instance of a supplier-client relationship, I personally believe, and this doesn't always happen, it depends on the size of the client and whether they have their own legal team or have their own HR team that deals with suppliers on a regular basis. It is the supplier that provides the contract. Me, in this instance. If I work directly with a client, I am the one who gives them my terms of engagement and they negotiate with me on that basis. If they find something disagreeable, we'll discuss it and we will negotiate and we will get to an agreeable term. If I'm working through an agency, I would love to provide my own terms, but that will never ever happen because the agency provide that service to both the client and the candidate or contractor or service provider or whatever you want to call us in that instance. They have both of their agreements, the one that they have with the client and the one that they have with us. They are an intermediary. They have to match to some degree. The salient terms have to match. So there's nothing really I can do in that situation other than go direct with the client, which is usually a breach of all kinds of moral problems. And if you've already
Legal
signed a
in some
contract,
cases as
well,
well.
if you've signed a contract and it's stipulated within the contract and you're opted in or out of the agency regulations, then that is a realistic term. If you're opted into the agency regulations, then they cannot restrict you from going direct with a client.
Yeah. just go back and listen to our Agents, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly podcast episode. Because oh my gosh,
the not the intermediaries, the the agency conduct regulations are very different from the agency workers regulations, which are very different from the intermediaries regulations. All of them apply.
Which is different from country to country, so be sure to check your own.
So we're talking. I will only talk about UK law.
Yeah, same.
There's nothing. I know nothing about any other country.
Of course you don't.
So other things that we need to include in contracts. Should we get onto that then? So generally we have a main terms section. The main terms is all the legal mumbo jumbo, all the jargon. I'd be happy to provide my contract to anybody who really wants to read it. I'm one of those people who reads every single word of every single contract.
Yes. So obviously you need definitions. That is something that you and I were talking about. That alone, depending upon what you're offering, can be massive.
I've seen definitions. I've seen, agreement definitions of like 3 or 4 pages long before now. But generally, mine in my contract's 1 page.
Yeah, generally speaking, mine's 1 page long, etc. But then, of course, you have, at least in my opinion, the deliverables, the terms and dates that are set for start and finish, or if there is a recurrence, when the recurrence is. I generally include in a billing cycle so that it is very explicitly clear what the cycle for billing will be.
We will raise an invoice on Friday and we expect it to be paid by the following Friday or 30 days or 60 days or whatever.
Or the last day of every month, or the first day of every month, or the 15th of it, like whatever it is, it needs to be explicitly.
You didn't actually say what you believed in terms of the contract. Who do you think should issue the contract?
I literally think it is representative of what it is that you're offering. Like in my case, my contract or bust.
Yep, same here. I mean, if it's an agency, I can't do anything about it. But if I'm with a client and they say, "Oh, we work with thousands of contractors and we have our own terms," I'm probably not going to go for that because I'm not going to enjoy that role. I can guarantee that by that bureaucratic process to start off with, and probably not going to agree.
I know people who work in HR and like find it the greatest thing since sliced bread. I take my hat off to you because I can't stand it. I absolutely can't stand it. It drives me nuts. But yeah, for me, at least, the one time that I say that, at least for me, what ended up happening is the client is the one who offered the contract to me. And that was when I stepped in to briefly fill a role that was, on my own terms, like all the things that you expect a contractor to do. The difference is I was actually filling a role in the company,
Mm.
which in today's day and age could lead us to the elephant in the room.
Which I've desperately tried to. I've already said it once.
I am so trying to avoid the elephant because
Yeah.
honestly, I know the moment I open my mouth and say the elephant, I am going to see bad things happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to what you should include in your contract.
I was just about to bring that back around. We will talk about the elephant maybe in another podcast, but yes, right. So we're talking about payment terms, how we're going to get paid, when we're going to get paid, what the rate is that we are charging, whether it's a rate or a fixed term, a fixed thing, the dates of agreement, the date that the agreement starts and the date the agreement ends, if it indeed does end.
And when it's signed.
And when you will deliver it.
Yes.
So if you're, for example, I may sign a contract today, and I may say, right, this contract runs indefinitely, because as a main agreement, I do this quite often with a lot of my clients. I've got 5 open contracts at the moment that are active. I've only got 2 or 3 of those that I'm billing for at the moment. And one of those has a main agreement and then a number of schedules attached to it for each deliverable. So each kind of set of work that I'm doing. First set of work, SDLC consultancy. Second set of work, provide a framework in Angular for something. Third set of work is put a build system together for this particular piece of software, that kind of thing. And then all of that is detailed as the deliverables on the contracts.
Well, see, to me, it's sort of you have the services and the services that you're doing, and then the deliverables from those services. Because, like, for example, like if I'm helping someone come up with a project plan, it's project management is the service, the deliverable is the plan.
Yeah, I term it in terms of project, which has got a name.
I separate them because in some cases, some of the things that I do can be just a service. Me literally sitting there listening to one of my clients rant, rave, and rip their hair out because of something that Amazon has done is actually a part of what I do.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so I do exactly the same. I have project and services. They are separate. The project is the overarching...
Terms. This is why you define the definitions, because
the overarching project is usually I'm working on the transformation project for 2020 or something like that. And it'll have a name, specific name internal to the company. And then the services will be either, I don't know, technical architecture covering these deliverables. But sometimes it will just be a point that's kind of fluffy. But it won't just be a job title. It will be still kind of, I am going to be providing these services for this project. Or it will be specific deliverables in the services. And I'm talking about write this class for a piece of code. Sometimes if I'm just engaged for a day, write an email class that sends an email to, I don't know, sends an email via SurveyMonkey or something like, I don't know, I'm just pulling things out of the air. I've never done that.
Don't use SurveyMonkey as an email relay. Go with something else. My gosh.
But you get the idea. It's usually quite explicit when I'm talking about deliverables.
Yeah.
So, other things. Client's full name.
Now here's a kicker thing. I have to throw this in here. We talked about it briefly about the payment terms and things like that. I have explicit stated into my contract late fees.
Yes, I have a late payments charge, which is just the standard stipulation of 8% plus the Bank of Interest base rate after 14 days. I think I've reduced mine to 14 days because I am on a 7-day payment term with most of my clients. And I'm a small company and I can't wait 30 days if they mess me around for too long.
Yeah, well, I got to pay my groceries, man. I'm telling you.
I'm not getting messed around by, and if it's in the contract, it's usually adhered to. Usually,
I also have a minimum fee, and this comes back to sort of the retainership thing. Because if I am working on a website for someone, and the key deliverables that I need in order to progress the website are in the client's hands, aka the copy that is going to be on a website, and I am sitting on my behind waiting for this,
Mm-hmm.
there still needs to be some money sitting in my pocket, because at the moment I get it, I have to drop whatever else I'm doing in order to keep up my own deliverables. But that's because I work with so many different clients at one time
I
versus what you do.
I do that. I can remember an instance this year, in fact, where I've put into a deliverable, not quite as explicit as dates. I need this by this date. It's been more, right, we have 20 days budget over the next 3 months or whatever. And I will deliver this as long as I am provided time and
Yes.
feedback from the relevant stakeholders or key members of your staff, you know. And in one instance, that was not adhered to, and I have proof and evidence that that was not adhered to. And in other instances, I was given more than enough time from the people, so I got the work done.
Ah, yes.
So we need to. We are running out of time already. So we
I know.
need to kind of
I'm
run.
purposely trying to avoid the elephant, and by doing so.
So
yeah.
no, I'm not talking about the elephant. Don't worry. I'm talking about the things that we need in the contract.
Okay.
So
Yes.
client's full name and address and company number, your full name and your company's full name and address and company number. We talked about the project details, services and scope, resources that will be provided. Now, in my instance, I provide a personal service as a consultant. So I say Christopher Seabock will be provided, but they can substitute, and we refer to that substitute as other personnel. You know, generally I will provide the services, but I need the right to replace myself if I really, really need to, which, just said, is probably never going to happen in my lifetime. Even if something happens to me and I'm unable to provide the services, I will speak to the client, and the client will probably understand.
Right. But in this particular case, when you're talking about resources, you're also talking about things like the hardware, software, tools. Like, for example, if someone wants to use me for websites, you know, I've got licenses for things like Creative Cloud, etc. I'm not going to turn around and demand that my client pays for that, because that's actually sort of cost of service.
That's part of your job when you're doing requirement gathering, to figure out what you need to perform the services. If you are going to need to buy a specialist piece of hardware, for example, if I agree to do a mobile application that runs on Apple devices, I do not do Apple mobile app. I don't do Apple. It's just not part of my service. If the client wants that, I will stipulate in the contract that I can provide the development environment that I need for Windows and Linux, but I cannot. The client must provide the environment for Apple, because that is a significant cost. Or I will add that onto my costs for the client if they're comfortable doing that. It's never happened, probably never will, but I'm happy to use the client's hardware in that instance. It
needs to be at least stated. You know, there has to be some kind of explanation for your
licenses. Licenses and software are a big one for me. Quite a lot of the time, a contractor is given an MSDN license when they go on site and work for a client. That's a £1,500 to £3,000 license that gets given to a software contractor, and they shouldn't do that. I mean, I have a Maps subscription, a partnership, Microsoft partnership subscription. Costs me £400 a year, and I get all of the software that I need, and I can use it for commercial reasons. You know, and I use that. That's part of the service I provide. I provide my own licenses.
Yep, and that's the thing. I mean, in my particular case, there are certain clients that I have that I do hosting with that are part of sort of I'll say a general cloud platform. And then there are others who pay for a very explicit type of platform, and it's on them to cover that particular cost. It never is on me or my company, I should say. Whereas the ones that are sort of in a general sort of thing, they all just know that they're covering, you know, this web hosting. They don't need to know the explicits of which platform.
So I also have things like licenses for Enterprise Architect, Sparks Enterprise Architect, because I use that for my data modeling, for my architecture of designing and that kind of thing. Right. I have my own license. I found that by working with a client many years ago and liked it and thought, oh, I can use this going forward. I've got my own, creative cloud license. All of this stuff gets paid for by my company to provide the services that I provide. And
Literally,
that's how it works.
the core systems. At least that's what I call them for myself. It is the core systems. It's a thing to me where if I did not have them, I would not exist as a company.
This meeting room that we're using now,
Yes.
there is a subscription charge to it. I
Yep.
have my own meeting room, not this one, but my own meeting room that I use for client meetings. And stand-ups and everything else that I need to do, speaking to people, and it's a charge, it's a cost, it's a service I provide, and then I don't provide it when I'm not working with them. So I actually had that.
They're making use of what is known as your company tools and assets, which again I think comes down to why I stress it should be your contract. But
yes.
That's specifically for us because there are situational things. So that's resources.
So other things, required insurances. In my industry, at least, I need public liability, indemnity insurance. I need employer's liability. That isn't necessarily a client's concern, but for my own company, my company needs to insure me as an employee.
And
just in case I want to sue my own company, but
yes, congratulations! I'm so glad of. But you never know. I mean,
might be lucrative.
Your wife works for you.
Might
right?
need to if all these all these changes come in.
But no, and another thing, at least in my case, is I have insurances for things like data breaches and stuff like that as well, because that is a thing, and it can get very terrifying. Some of the clients that I have sort of life and death situations depending upon certain security things. So it's so important for me to have myself covered because I am smart enough in the world of security to know it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Well,
you do the best mitigations you can, but if something happens and a client decides to come at me, there is some kind of protection.
Well, that's what professional indemnity and professional indemnity is for, and public liability is for if you leave your laptop bag in a walkway
or
and someone trips over
USB
it,
stick or something in a subway.
That's
just saying.
Yeah, well, that's professional indemnity, that one. But the liabilities for
just any kind of insurances types of things. Yeah.
So confidential information, which is different from intellectual property. Confidential information is something that we, by nature, we work with clients and we work with their information. We've got personal information sometimes, employees, information about their contracts and their clients, information in the security sector. You may not have to be security cleared, but you're working with that confidential information. Trade secrets, proprietary information, proprietary code, proprietary designs, that is covered in a contract as well. Basically, it basically just says, we will not steal it, we will not give it to anybody else, and if we do, we are liable for that.
It's your basic general NDA, non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, to an extent. Confidential information is slightly different from the NDA. NDA is a bit more explicit. And then
with the confidential information, you start dealing in personally identifiable information, which then you're looking at the GDPR.
Yes, so that's our data protection, which is slightly different from confidential information.
They're all kind of under the same
They
umbrella,
are, but they're all specific. They've all got their own legislation surround. Sorry, the GDPR is a specific legislation, so that is covered separately. We've got intellectual property, which is the assignment of the work that we do to the client, which is quite important.
Yeah, or vice versa. Depending entirely.
So one of the clauses I always put in, and always ask agencies to put in as well, any work that I have previously done, for example, I may have written this email class that we talked about earlier, this piece of code that sends an email to somebody, but I may copy and paste that and use it for different clients. It may have initially took me a couple of days to write it, maybe longer, I don't know, but I will copy and paste it into a client's code base because I've already written that code. Why rewrite it, I own the IP to that particular piece of code or architectural design or design pattern or whatever, and it's very difficult to prove that kind of thing, but code is more explicit. You can actually do forensic analysis on code bases. And
well, yes, you can, and there is a whole can of worms, and we should totally do a show about that.
So that in that instance, I need to know that I still own the right, and I assign the client a license, a worldwide, non-exclusive license, and that code may very well exist in my other clients' code bases as well. So that's very, very important to me, but also it's important to my clients that anything I write that's new and novel and I've created a work while I've been while I've been doing the work under this assignment. It's difficult to word this sometimes. Is theirs. It belongs to them. So I can't come back and go, right, I'm taking this work and running off with it. I've designed this brand new website.
Yeah, this is why it is so important, at least in my opinion, to not have just a blanket contract. It really needs to be tailor fit to each individual client, at least in my circumstance. It needs
There are some general terms that you can blanket apply, but
yes, but there are some general ones, but at the same time, you need to be a bit more specific. Now, we're getting close to the end of the show, so I'm going to let you, Chris, very quickly bullet point out anything else you want to.
So there was
fit it. It's just
There was only one or two more things. So there's the general contractual things that are in every contract on every business contract in the world ever, which are things like variation, privity, severability, waiver, anti-corruption, governing law, as in this is governed by the law of the UK, England and Wales, and force majeure, which is things that we cannot avoid. If something happens, like force majeure, I consider disconnected internet as force majeure. I know we can mitigate that by having a second line, but if I am disconnected from the world and I'm providing services remotely, to me, that's something I've got no control over. So I put that in my force majeure thing. If there's an earthquake and everything, my house falls down, I can't provide my services anymore. Sorry,
yeah, well, I think in America they're called acts of God.
Yeah, same thing. Force majeure, acts of God.
Yeah, but they literally are called just acts of God.
We're a very secular society in the UK these days, so we don't refer to the great being in the sky. So not in contracts anyway.
Yes, so we're going to pull that in there, and we've covered quite a few things that should be in contracts. Now, again, I'm going to have you stipulate the fantastic red text again.
Can I just, there's one or two more points before we finish. We are still 15 minutes away. Let me just finish off the things that should be in the contract.
We're 11, but go ahead.
Right, so mutuality of obligation. That is a term that basically states that my client is not responsible for providing me work after or outside of this agreement. And also, right. I do not have to take an offer of work from my client outside of this agreement. The only other things are the right of substitution, which we talked about briefly, right to subcontracting, and that's about any SLAs, that kind of thing that we have in there.
Yep.
And that's it.
And are you sure you got everything?
I did. I got everything that should really be in a contract. There's other things that shouldn't be in a contract and plenty of other things we want to talk about, but I'm happy with that as a general term.
Sort of like we actually got everything into one type of episode instead of spread out across multiple, like we sometimes have to do. But to be fair, there is an awful lot to unpack in this. And there are going to be things where, based on the type of work that you do, whether you are doing sort of, fill your butt in the seat kind of a thing, to whether you are doing, work where you are literally forced to move locations. So relocation and things like that can be included in contracts as well. All of these things, obviously see a lawyer, etc. Now, with all of that in mind, we purposely left out IR35. We'll come back to that. There is a reason, but we will come back to that. I am actually incredibly proud of us for at least doing what we have done this episode. Now we move on towards the end of our show, and I am going to remind you that we no longer do the RTFM. We actually do the BYOM, which is to bring your own manual. Yes, this is a chance for us to share knowledge of things that may have kind of made us go, wow, or I didn't know that, or that's kind of cool, or something, just to help empower. So, Chris, what did you learn this week or these past couple weeks?
I have learned that just now I've learned that XSplit doesn't always put my Discord into into the right mode when I started up. So, as I said, apologies for that, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Mine didn't either.
Yeah, but you don't do the XSplit normally does on my side. It normally puts it on. So thank you very much for that, whoever that was. But no, this week I have learned, and I already knew this, but the world is full of different people. Nobody has the same opinion, and everybody is on a different journey. I've done quite a lot of online social kind of networking this week, especially on platforms like LinkedIn. More professional like stuff than normal, more kind of focused on what we're talking about today, contracts and IR35 and that kind of thing. And there are lots of people with lots of different opinions, and we're not always right. And when we're not always right, we can accept, we can say that we're wrong, and it's not a weakness. It's not. I mean, I knew this anyway, but you need reminding every now and again that it's not a weakness to be wrong.
No.
Yeah. So I mean, I think empathy, I suppose, is
Sonder, Chris.
Yeah,
Sonder. It always comes back to Sonder.
I've been reminded of empathy.
Oh, I see. It's interesting. You went with a humanistic approach this week, whereas for me, I'm actually going to go a software thing this week. For me, I had the most interesting thing occur. An update for Java appeared on my system. Now, Java is installed on my system so that I can do things like play Minecraft. Because it's kind of a fundamental building block for being able to play Minecraft. However, Java did something that made little Darth Securitas inside of me smile. So it comes up to do the update and it goes, "Oh, we noticed that you haven't used Java in over 6 months. You should just remove me from your system. Would you like to uninstall Java?" And I said, "Hell yeah, ka-ching." But the fact that that was presented to me and there was a time attachment to it made the little security girl in me freak out. I was like dancing. I was like, what?
Yeah, Tiltepper's just said Java and security in the same sentence.
I know. It just made my mind just go, what? I was really, really, really excited by that. So yeah, that is a thing I learned. I also, because I have an added bonus this week, I also learned a thing or two about .NET Core.
Okay.
And that is because I've recently done a podcast with one of our previous guests from the .NET Core show, which will be out soon and stuff. And I basically put poor old Jamie to the ropes about .NET Core to have him try and convince me to actually get involved in it. Okay. I cannot give out any spoilers about whether or not that was successful or whether I basically broke him. But I will state that it'll be an interesting listen, and we'll let you guys know when it's out. So I learned something that I can't share because I can't share information about this yet. It'd be spoilers. But yeah, that whole Java thing, that absolutely blew my mind. I was so happy for like 30 minutes. And then, of course, the high wore off and I needed to do some more. But,
I don't think I've got Java installed on my machine. The last time I installed it was, I think I played Minecraft a few years ago, and Java. It was the Java version of it. Don't have any call to install it. I'm not a Java guy, so.
Yeah. But yes. So that is our BYOM. Bring your own manual.
Yes. Yes.
And we are now at the end of our show. Thank you to all of you fantastic people in Twitch, Volchcrack and Vina, Dultepe, and everybody else. Thank you so much for participating with us and joining in. And of course, to everyone listening in the future on our podcast, thanks for listening to us ramble about contracts. The most sexiest subject in the world when it comes to development.
Indeed, yes. And you can visit our website on www.dnistream.live, where we have all of our links to our podcast platforms. We're on lots of different discovery platforms. You can see that on there. We're on YouTube as well, and all of our episodes are listed on there. We will be doing some work on that soon and updating it. making it a bit more efficient. You can use the contact form there to get in touch with us for any reason. If you've got any comments, you've got any ideas for subjects, or you've got any questions, or want to be a guest on the show, please do get in touch.
Yeah. And we just like to talk to people who are excited about, I'm going to branch out and say, development, DevOps, SysOps, support, people, teams, development. Yay! Just, you want to join us. Don't worry, Chris only bites when you mention his beard. It's all good.
I don't bite at all. I know I might seem like it on the internet, but I'm a nice person in real life, I think.
And on that glorious bombshell, all that's left is for us to say goodbye. We hope to see you all next week at Thursday at 7 p.m. UK time. There is a potential interesting thing that may or may not occur next week, but I can't say anything because I don't know. Basically, I'm leaving you in the dark. Either way, see you on twitch.tv/DNI stream. Bye, everybody.
Bye.